Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, maybe good evening. We're so excited that it's getting to be the start of the semester, and we're looking forward to having everyone back on campus for those that are in the United States, and to hearing more from our students that are still outside of the United States. If you have questions, if you'll please send those questions either in the chat box, because Jody Hazykamp is going to monitor the chat box for us. So if you have questions along the way, please submit them. You can also submit them to Jody's email address, which is hazykamp J, I believe, and Jody, please correct me. I should have written that down. You can send them to Jody Hazykamp directly as well. So I think we'll get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen to so that we can look at the presentation together. We're going to talk to you a little bit about your enrollment and SEVIS record for current students for the fall semester 2020. So I think most of you are aware that things are changing quickly. Wanted to give you some background about why we're talking about some changes to things that are not the normal way of processing things. Back on March 9th and 13th, SEVP issued some guidance and an addendum, and that's when the COVID-19, the coronavirus, was exploding worldwide, and the university made a decision to go to fully online classes. And at that time, SEVP issued guidance that said that if a school moves to all online classes, that students may maintain their status by staying enrolled full-time and being enrolled in those online classes. On July 6th, SEVP issued new guidance that said that students that are enrolled fully online would be required to leave the United States. Several schools, such as Harvard and MIT, filed lawsuits. Several of those schools have decided that they're going to be fully online for the fall semester, and they filed lawsuits to protect the students so that you didn't have to leave the United States. On July 14th, it was announced that that July 6th guidance was rescinded, and we were advised to refer back to the policies or the guidance that was issued on March 9th and the addendum that was issued on March 13th. So the information that was issued in March was for the situation where schools were moving from in-person classes to online classes. And so a lot of the information was confusing when we're thinking about the fall semester and how students will be enrolled for the fall semester. So on July 24th, clarifying questions for the fall semester were issued, and so that information is what we're going to use for our discussion today. If you're interested in reviewing the clarifying questions for the fall semester and you want to look at it for yourself, if you've not done it already, you can go to our International COVID-19 page, and the link is showing there, and there's a link to the July 24th guidance broadcast that you can use. So the information that we're going to be providing today is based on this July 24th guidance broadcast. The information that we've been given so far, it varies. It's different if you're considered to be a current or continuing student, or if you're considered to be a new student. So I wanted to discuss with you what is a current or continuing student and what is considered to be a new student. So if you were a student at Missouri S&T as of March 9th, 2020, and you have otherwise complied with the terms of your non-immigrant status, then you are a current or a continuing student. This would also include students who have transferred to Missouri S&T from another school and that you've maintained your non-immigrant status and you've remained in the US. It's not necessarily logical, but if you were a transfer student and you left the United States, then you're going to fall into the new student category. If you're a student who has had a change of education level, such as you've graduated in May or graduated at the end of July, maybe with your undergraduate degree, and now you're moving to the master's degree, then you would also be considered a current student. In the new student section are students who were not attending Missouri S&T as of March 9th and that have been issued an I-20 in the status of initial. As I mentioned earlier, it also includes students who transferred to Missouri S&T from another school and who traveled outside the United States. If you're returning to the United States and you were a transfer student, then you fall under the new student category, and new students are required to have an in-person component to their enrollment for fall semester. So most of the information in this webinar is going to be focused on current or continuing students, but I wanted to provide you an explanation of what a current or continuing student versus a new student is. So if you are a current student and you're either outside the United States and planning to return, or you remained in the United States, this is what applies to you. You may continue your studies in a combination of in-person, hybrid blended, and online courses. This means that there's currently no limits for the number of credit hours that you can be enrolled in for online enrollment, and you have a choice of how you are enrolled full-time, including a combination of the course types, which are in-person, hybrid blended, or online. You can also be enrolled 100% online in the United States and still maintain your SEVIS status. So if you're a current student and you're in the United States, once we verify that you were enrolled full-time in any combination of the course types, and we verify that you're in the United States by checking your I-94 status, then your SEVIS record will be validated and your status will remain as active. If you're outside the US and you will be returning to the United States, we want to make sure that we give you some pointers or give you some information that you want to keep in mind. We can provide to you a letter that you can carry with you. The letter can state that Missouri S&T is offering a combination of in-person, hybrid blended, and fully online courses. If you would like to have a letter, if you could send an email to ia@mst.edu, then we will send you a copy of that letter. You may want to print that letter and carry it with you when you travel. We are not currently updating all I-20s for students that are outside of the United States, but if you feel like it is necessary, you would like it, we can also update your I-20 to include a remark that Missouri S&T is offering a combination of in-person, hybrid blended, and fully online courses for the fall semester. So if you're outside the United States and you're still planning to travel back, you might want to take note of this information. We also want to recommend that you be ready to answer any questions about your plans for fall enrollment, because the July 6th guidance that was sent out said that students that are enrolling fully online would not be able to remain in the United States. And that has been rescinded, but you want to be able to talk to the board when you're coming through customs and immigration. You want to be prepared and know what your plans are for the fall enrollment. You want to be able to explain that Missouri S&T is doing the hybrid model and that you have the ability to enroll in classroom-based and blended courses. So think about that before you reach the point of customs and immigration. If you're traveling with an electronic copy of an I-20, it's acceptable. That's part of the guidance that we have received, is that you may travel with an electronic version, a printed version of your I-20. However, if you have an old I-20 that has a wet signature, an ink signature on it that shows that you were approved for travel, it wouldn't hurt you to have that with you as well. So we would encourage you to have the most recent copy that was sent to you electronically, but also to carry with you an old copy that has an ink signature on it as well. If you're a current student and you're planning to remain outside the United States, you can maintain your SEVIS status of active if you are fully enrolled in online courses. So if you are still in your home country and you enroll in 12 undergraduate credit hours for undergrads or 9 graduate credit hours for graduate students, we're going to be able to update your SEVIS record to show a status of active. Your I-20 must be updated to include a comment in the remarks field that notes that you're outside of the United States due to COVID-19. So just know that we're going to be updating your SEVIS record for that, but we also want you to know that if you're not able to return to the United States right now, that you can maintain your active SEVIS status by fully enrolling online. If you're a current student and you're remaining outside of the United States, but you're not planning to enroll fully in online courses, then the information that we have at this time is that your SEVIS record will be terminated for the reason of authorized early withdrawal. And with a termination reason of authorized early withdrawal, we are able, typically, in normal circumstances, to reactivate your SEVIS record or to request that your SEVIS record be reactivated if it's requested within 5 months. However, there is still some uncertainty whether that 5 months will be from the last day of attending an in-person class or from the date the record is terminated. That information is not yet clear to us, and we're looking for further guidance for that information. So if you are a current student and you're planning to remain outside of the US, we would encourage you to reach out to your international student advisor and let us know of your plans so that we can make sure and keep you fully updated. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar is mainly focused on current students, but just in case we had a new student joining us, I wanted to just touch briefly on this. If you are a new student entering the United States, you must take at least one course that is face-to-face or hybrid. The guidance has said that new students cannot enter the US if they are going to be studying 100% online. If you're a new student and you are going to remain outside of the United States for the fall semester, you can begin your studies online, and then we will be issuing you a new I-20 with spring semester dates that you'll be able to use to request a visa or to enter the United States. If you are a transfer student and you are outside of the United States, then you also fall into that category where you are required to take at least one course, either in face-to-face courses or hybrid courses, in order for you to be allowed to enter the United States for the fall semester. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand the differences and know what applies to you. Some fall semester reminders. Students arriving in Rolla are required to quarantine before coming to campus. So if you have been outside of the Rolla community, we ask that you become familiar with the campus requirements, and you can find that information if you visit coronavirus.mst.edu. There's a section of that webpage that is Return to Campus, and it has detailed information for students that are returning to the Rolla community and to the campus. If you've been out of the Rolla community, then you need to make sure you understand this information and that you comply with it. If you'll be arriving in Rolla from an international location, you need to quarantine off campus for 14 days. If you've been inside the United States, but you've been outside of the Rolla area, you need to quarantine for 7 days. Each semester, International Affairs is required to validate each international student's record in SEVIS. And to do the validation, we look to make sure that you are enrolled full-time or you receive approval for reduced course enrollment and have otherwise complied with your non-immigrant status. The fall semester is going to be very complicated compared to most semesters because we now have students that are able to maintain their SEVIS status by being enrolled fully online, both from in the United States and from outside the United States. Because of this, we're going to be developing a process where we're going to ask each student to confirm their location and their enrollment status. So please watch your Missouri S&T email address as we send more information out about this process. It's going to be very important that you respond in a timely manner, because we're not going to be able to validate your record in SEVIS until you have responded. So please monitor your Missouri S&T email address closely for information related to this SEVIS status validation. We've had a few questions that have been submitted to us beforehand, so I've gone ahead and provided answers to those questions. And then when we're done with these, there will be an opportunity to see if anyone has submitted any questions during the webinar. So the first question that was submitted is, if the in-person class has been changed to online during the semester, what should I do? So I've referenced back to the guidance that was issued on July 24th. And a question in that guidance said, can students remain in the United States if their school switches from traditional in-person or hybrid instruction to fully online? And the answer includes that non-immigrant students pursuing studies in the United States for the fall 2020 school term may remain in the United States even if their educational institution switches to a hybrid program or to fully online. The students will maintain their non-immigrant status in this scenario and would not be subject to initiation of removal proceedings based on their online studies. If a student violates U.S. laws or regulations, they could potentially be subject to removal. So what this means is that at the beginning of the semester, if a student, a new student or a transfer student who is outside the U.S., if you entered the United States to begin studies for the fall semester, you're required to be enrolled in at least one in-person class or hybrid class for the fall semester. Once the semester begins, if Missouri S&T changes from a hybrid program to fully online due to the coronavirus, it's our understanding at this time that students will be able to maintain their status. What we want students that fall under this category to do is you need to closely monitor the classes that you've enrolled in, because even before classes start, the registrar's office has notified us that classes may change their mode of delivery. And so if your class mode of delivery changes, you may need to enroll in a different class in order to meet that in-person class requirement. So as long as Missouri S&T is offering in-person and hybrid blended classes, if you fall in the category of new students, which includes the transfer students that were outside the US, then you have to be enrolled in what is considered to be an in-person class. And that could be a seated in-person class or a hybrid blended class. The next question that was submitted is, if I'm currently enrolled full-time in online classes while outside the US, and one or some of my online classes offer in-person examinations, will there be proctored Zoom examinations like we had in the summer? I contacted the registrar's office to get clarification for this, and the information that I was provided said that students should contact their academic department or the academic department for the course, as each academic department may have different alternatives set up. So if you are outside of the United States and you have enrolled in a class that has any in-person requirements or components, you should follow up directly with the academic department for that course to see what direction they give you. And the last question that I received was, can a graduate international student reduce his credit hours below the 9 credit hours minimum requirement when in a semester that is not its final semester? Because in the new policy, new graduate student registration policy 220, it states that a PhD student can take 1 credit hour after he has completed his comprehensive exam until he graduates. So I've posted here the information from policy memorandum number 2-20. And it does say that once all requirements have been met, with the exception of the master's comprehensive exam or final defense and acceptance of the final thesis dissertation, 1 credit hour charged as outlined in the current fee schedule based on individual residency or program status of special problems for a master's non-thesis student or graduate research for a master's thesis or doctoral student will be considered as full-time enrollment each semester or session until the degree is completed. Students may request or confirm the eligibility for this 1 credit hour enrollment by submitting an updated plan of study to Graduate Studies. Once Graduate Studies confirms a student's eligibility for the 1 credit hour as full-time enrollment, a milestone or a notation will be added at the top of the student's degree audit report. International Affairs will accept the 1 credit hour as full-time enrollment for students who have this milestone noted on the degree audit. So if you have questions about this option, the policy, you should contact Graduate Studies and submit your new study plan. And those were the questions that have been submitted for so far before the presentation. Jody is monitoring to see if there's any questions that have been submitted. Jody, do you have any?
Yeah, so I got a couple questions before the webinar that I'll share with you guys. One of them being, what are the conditions for reduced course registration, and what are the deadline, or what is the deadline for that?
So the same process will apply for reduced course registration as has been in the past. So, and I apologize, everybody. I have moved back into the immigration side of things, so I'm a little fuzzy on some of the information. Shauna, are you on the call? She's not. So I'm going to go off of what I remember. So reduced course request has to be submitted within the first 2 weeks of class, I believe, and there's a form that you would have to fill out for reduced course enrollment. If you have a question, if you have a specific situation where you're needing or wanting reduced course enrollment, then you should contact your international student advisor and explain your situation to them, and they can provide you with instructions.
Okay. I think this question will probably be best answered by Grad Studies, but I'll share it here. A student said that he passed the written part of his PhD qualifying exam, but needs to reschedule the oral part of the exam. So yeah, for that, I would recommend that you contact Graduate Studies to reschedule that. Do you foresee any immigration impact in that situation, Susan?
I don't. If they've not completed their program, then it would be the same as it was before COVID-19.
Okay. And then another question, if a student wanted to change their position from PhD student to master's student, what is the process and deadline for that? And should that be completed before the start of the semester?
So if you're wanting to change your level of degree program, then you need to, and I apologize, it's been a long time since I've answered these specific questions. So if you want to change, from example, from PhD down to master's, you'll need to be accepted into the master's program. And I would say that you would need to contact your Graduate Studies advisor. Once your degree program is changed from PhD down to master's, then we'll receive notice and we would update your I-20 to reflect your new degree level.
Okay, so I think we covered this question during the presentation, but just to make sure that there's no additional questions, if a student is not able to return for fall semester, what will happen to their I-20 and SEVIS? So that'll depend on your enrollment. You'll want to, if you want to remain full-time enrolled, you can do that online, and you'll be able to maintain your SEVIS record. If you choose not to enroll online and do it full-time, then you'll do authorized early withdrawal.
Correct.
Okay. And then it looks like we have some additional questions in the chat as well. Let me pull those up. What about the PCR test? I'm not sure what that is. Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is either. I'm sorry.
Nasser, do you want to unmute yourself or if anyone knows what PCR stands for, you can message that to us and we'll try to answer that. And then we have another question. If a student, all of their fall classes are showing that they're going to be in person, how can they change it to online?
Well, I think that you have to look at the courses that are offered, and then you would enroll in whatever courses you select. So it's the same process. You would go out and look at the class offerings.
Yeah.
So you do want to make sure that you make any changes before August 23rd, because any changes after August 3rd may incur some fees.
Right. And so sometimes a course will have multiple sections. So you want to be sure to check that. There might be one section that is meaning in person, and there might be one section that's meaning online or blended. So be sure to check that. If you have any questions specifically about courses, you can always reach out to the registrar's office or the instructor of that course. Okay, so it looks like the PCR test is a COVID-19 test. So this is a great point, I think, that we want to make sure that we bring up, that if you have any COVID-19 related questions, you can always reach out to Student Health Services, and they have a whole team that is fielding those questions and has all the most updated information. So you can reach them by sending an email to covid@mst.edu. So for what's required for that type of test, or if you're interested in taking that test and having access to it in Raleigh, if you have questions about if you need to take the test before traveling in the US, I would recommend that all those type of questions be directed to Student Health at covid@mst.edu. Do you have anything to add to that, Susan?
Nope, that sounds like my recommendation as well.
It looks like someone shared in the chat that currently the US and Missouri are not requiring any testing prior to arrival, although it would be great if you can do a test. And currently we do not have any lessening quarantine requirements depending on testing. So just as another review, if you are traveling internationally, you will need to quarantine for 14 days before arriving on campus. I think what Saleh is the important information that he's sharing is even if you take a COVID-19 test right before you depart your home country to travel to the US, that doesn't impact your quarantine requirements. You're still required to quarantine for 14 days. So we have a question here. PhD students take independent study credits towards the research every summer or every semester. Do they count as in-person or online courses? So I think you would, again, like look in JOES at the instruction mode that will be listed there, and some instructors, some faculty members may be offering online independent study credits, some may be offering in person. So I think it will vary on the faculty member that you're working with. So I'd recommend to contact them directly. Our next question is, can we travel between fall and spring semester?
I think at this point, if you travel, if you leave Raleigh, as I understand it right now, if you leave Raleigh, you're going to be required to quarantine again. So as long as you're in the Raleigh community, then you would not have to quarantine. But if you travel, then you would need to make your plan so that you could meet any quarantine requirements that were in place at the time of your travel.
Right. And if you are traveling on university-related business, such as you're going to a conference or something like that, you'll want to be sure to check what the university travel requirements are at that time. They're, being updated as the situation updates. Personal travel, of course, isn't restricted, but you still need to keep, as Susan mentioned, the quarantine requirements, and especially if you're traveling internationally, any I-20 signatures and things like that. But if it is university related, you want to be sure to follow those rules as well.
And the coronavirus.mst.edu webpage has a travel tab on it, so you may want to review that information. If you're talking about traveling for personal travel, you may also want to review the information about returning to campus at that coronavirus.mst.edu webpage.
We have this question: if someone has to travel in any other states during the semester, does he need to quarantine? I think that this would probably be a question that's best answered by emailing COVID-19 or covid@mst.edu. I'm not sure personally what the quarantine requirements are going to be throughout the semester. Do you have any other recommendations, Susan?
No, we're looking to the Student Health Services and the COVID team to provide us that guidance.
Yeah. Here, what information should current students be providing to the International Affairs Office in the email, and what should be expecting, just to reiterate what that information the students need to be providing?
Sure. So we have already started reviewing them. We're pulling a list of students that are enrolled for the fall semester. And what we will be doing is we will be sending out an email. And I imagine that it's going to be some type of a survey response, but we'll provide you more information about that. And we're going to try to determine who is in the United States and who is outside the United States. And then based on your situation, are you a current student? Or are you a new student? We'll verify that your enrollment meets the requirements for full-time enrollment. So right now, we're just asking that you be aware that we're going to be sending you requests for information, and that you watch for it and that you respond promptly after receiving it. We're still working out processes. The whole campus is trying to get processes in place, and the registration, the SEVIS registration this year, for this fall semester, is going to be very different than it is typically. So we just ask that you watch for that email, and then once you receive it, follow the instructions and send us the information. But we're going to be looking, if you're in the United States, we're going to be verifying your I-94 record. If you're outside the United States, then we're going to need to and you're fully enrolled, we're going to need to update your SEVIS record to include the comment that'll print out on your I-20, and we'll provide you a new I-20 with a statement that you're outside of the United States due to COVID-19. If you're outside the United States and you're not enrolled full-time, then we're going to be communicating with you about the termination for authorized early withdrawal for your SEVIS record. So this is really going to be a lot of independent communication and trying to look at each student's situation so that we can provide you the best advice and help you meet your needs as best we can.
Okay, so we've got a few new questions that have came in. Is traveling to St. Louis also the result of self-quarantine? And does this include coming from St. Louis if you come in contact with any people there? So before the start of this semester, anyone who is traveling outside or is traveling to Rolla from outside anywhere, whether that be Columbia, Kansas City, St. Louis, California, Kuwait, wherever, or not Kuwait, you need 14 days, but anywhere in the US, that's 7 days. So if you're traveling, if you go to St. Louis and then come back before the start of camp or the start of the semester, we recommend that you self-quarantine for those 7 days. Again, if you're trapped once the semester starts, and I think student health is definitely encouraging students, faculty, staff that we reduce our travel, try to stay local, reduce your movement in the community so that we can all stay safe. But if you do need to leave Rolla once the semester starts, again, we'd recommend that you reach out to covid@mst.edu and find out if you need to do additional self-quarantine or what they would recommend for those situations. Are there any special guidelines for students returning from their CPT after completing an internship or a co-op?
So at this time, the normal processes would apply. So a student completing their CPT or returning from CPT or co-op, you would want to enroll in classes, be enrolled full-time. Again, if that would be considered a continuing student, so you could enroll fully online, or you could enroll in a combination of in-person, blended, or online classes. So there's no special change, nothing has changed in relation to the ending of your CPT.
All right, I think that is all the questions that we have for now.
Maybe I should say, if your CPT was outside of the community of Rolla, then you would need to meet those quarantine requirements that are being asked for everyone.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll give anyone else any last opportunities to submit a question. Susan, I think you have a few more slides with some other important information. So if, as Susan goes through this information, if you think of any additional questions, please type them in the chat box and we'll be happy to answer those.
We have sent out to you several times, but most recently on July 29th, we have sent you a survey where we asked you to let us know what are your travel plans, and if you're returning to Rolla, what are your housing plans. If you have not filled that survey out, we would ask that you go ahead and fill that survey out. We're trying to use this information to figure out how many students will be returning to Rolla, how many students were still in the Rolla community. We're trying to know if there's any specific needs that regarding a student's quarantine. So you can find that link to the survey if you go out to the international.mst.edu/COVID-19 webpage. And if there are different sections of different communications that we've sent out. If you look at the communication that was sent out on July 29th, then you can read the information we sent out, and you can also find towards the bottom of that section, you'll find the link for the survey. So if you have not already done the survey, or if the information you provided has changed, if you would please go complete the survey, that will be really helpful for us. We would appreciate it. We also want to let you know that this is a very unique situation. I think that, to my knowledge, it's never happened before where universities have gone away from in-person classes to online classes like we did this spring. We are monitoring communications related to the coronavirus from government and professional organizations. The situation is still very fluid, and it is possible that more guidance will come out. And what we want you to do is we really want you to pay close attention to your Missouri S&T email, because any updates that we need to send out to you are going to be sent to your Missouri S&T email address. And we would encourage you to keep up to date, watch the news, read the information, stay up to date, educate yourself on the situation. But just know that it could still change. We don't know if new information or new guidance will be sent out, but we want you to be aware that we're doing our best to monitor the situation. We want to do what's best for you. We have your well-being at the top of our list, and we'll be communicating with you if more information is provided. For the latest coronavirus information from Missouri S&T, there's two web pages that you need to be aware of. The first one is for the university as a whole. It's coronavirus.mst.edu. And the second one is international.mst.edu/COVID-19. And on the international one, we post the notices that have been sent out to students, and we also post information that's directly related to international students. But both of these web pages are very important for you to take a look at, become familiar with, and we hope you'll monitor them closely. We have issued a notice, and you should have also received an email about a division of students among our international student advisors. If you find that your situation doesn't meet the scenarios we've talked about, or if you have questions that are particular to your certain situation, or if you have other questions, I've listed here the advisors and which student breakdown each of the advisors each of the student groups that the advisors handle. So you might want to make a note of who your international student advisor is and their email address and how to contact them directly if you have questions. And that's our information.
All right.
So,
I have one more reminder for
okay.
sponsored students. Please be sure to check with your sponsoring agency about what your scholarship requirements are for fall. Oftentimes, scholarships will limit the number of online classes that you're allowed to take, but fall may provide some special circumstances. So you can always reach out to Eleanor or I if you have questions, but ultimately it's your responsibility to know what your scholarship guidelines are so that you can follow those. And then additionally, we got in another question in the chat box, so we'll answer that. How about assistantships if you stay abroad but are enrolled and research could be conducted via distance?
So I had someone else ask that question, and I suggested, what I was told is to refer you to your academic department to see if they're still going to offer the assistantship if you're not here in Rolla. You also need to communicate with the human resources, because that's an employee question, and there may be some tax consequences related to employment while you're outside of the United States. So I would encourage that you contact your academic advisor, and also that you communicate either through your academic department or directly with human resources.
Very good. All right. Well, I think that's all of the questions that we've had. Susan, thanks for sharing all of this valuable information and important reminders for everyone. Again, reach out to your international advisor if you have additional questions, or you can also email ia@mst.edu. And then COVID questions you can send to covid@mst.edu. Another important reminder for students who are abroad and are going to be traveling back to Rolla within these coming weeks, please be sure to send an email to covid@mst.edu with your travel plans. Then Student Health will provide you with some additional details just on your quarantine and things that we all need to keep in mind to stay healthy during these times. So, and as you prepare for the new semester, also don't forget your mask and hand sanitizer when you're coming to campus.
We can't wait for you to come back. We're looking forward to seeing your faces again and to having you on campus. And for those students that are studying online or not in the Rolla area, we're still here to help you, and we're so excited for the semester to get started and to get back to somewhat normal ways of things. So welcome back to the semester.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. And again, if you have any other questions, please reach out and let us know.
Bye.